My brother said, "Here's to family," except for Alex, the failure who thinks money makes him worth something. My parents laughed, so I raised my glass and said, "To the failure who just stopped paying." Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This story spans several years, but the main revenge takes place over 6 months. Buckle up because this gets absolutely brutal by the end. Also, fair warning, this is going to be extremely long, but I promise it's worth reading to the end. Let me paint you a detailed picture of my family dynamic because it's crucial for understanding how we got here. I, 34 male, and I've been the family disappointment since the moment I could walk. My older brother Derek, 36 male, was everything parents dream about in their perfect son. Star quarterback in high school with multiple scholarship offers, business degree from State University, naturally charismatic personality that could light up any room. The guy was basically born with a silver tongue and golden touch. Teachers loved him despite mediocre grades. Coaches fought over him despite average athletic ability, and girls followed him around like he was some kind of celebrity. He had this effortless charm that made people want to be around him and help him succeed. Me? I was the weird kid who spent entire weekends in the garage building birdhouses, fixing broken appliances, and teaching myself electrical work from library books. While Derek was throwing parties and being homecoming king, I was learning carpentry techniques and studying building codes. Not exactly what screams future success to most suburban parents, especially when your other son is getting recruitment letters from college football programs. My parents weren't outright cruel or abusive. They fed me, clothed me, made sure I did homework and chores. But the favoritism was so obvious it might as well have been written in neon lights across our front yard. Derek could literally fail 3 classes in a semester, and they'd blame the teachers for not understanding his unique learning style or having unrealistic expectations. Meanwhile, I could build an entire deck addition for our backyard at age 16, complete with proper permits and everything, and get a quick, nice job before they shifted conversation back to Derek's latest football game. Derek got new cars for birthdays while I got gift cards to Home Depot. Derek's accomplishments went on the refrigerator and social media. Mine got filed away in some drawer. When Derek needed money for spring break trips or new clothes, it appeared instantly. When I needed materials for projects or tools for my growing skill set, I had to earn every penny myself through odd jobs and summer work. Here's where my story takes an interesting turn, though. While everyone automatically assumed Derek would be the successful one based on charisma and social skills, I was quietly building something real and sustainable. Started doing odd jobs around our neighborhood in high school. Basic home repairs, small renovations, helping elderly neighbors with projects their families couldn't handle. Word spread incredibly fast in our small town that there was actually a teenager who knew what he was doing and showed up when he said he would. By 18, I had a waiting list of customers and more work than I could handle alone. By 20, I'd saved enough money to buy my first work truck and start my own legitimate contracting business. Nothing fancy or impressive, just me, some quality tools, and a reputation for reliability in a market full of flaky contractors who overpromised and underdelivered. But I had 2 major things going for me that most competitors didn't. I was obsessively reliable and genuinely skilled at what I did. Small-town contractors who actually show up on schedule, finish projects when promised, and do quality work? That's rarer than finding buried treasure in your backyard. The business grew steadily through word-of-mouth referrals. Started with simple bathroom renovations and kitchen remodels for middle-class families. Then graduated to complete house flips for real estate investors. Eventually moved into commercial projects like office renovations and small retail build-outs. By 25, I was running a crew of 8 full-time employees and regularly pulling contracts worth low 6 figures. But the real breakthrough came from understanding market opportunities that others missed. While established contractors were fighting over the same profitable projects, I started buying distressed properties at foreclosure auctions, renovating them myself using my crew during slow periods, then either flipping them for substantial profits or converting them to rental properties for ongoing income. My first rental property purchase at 26 was a complete disaster on paper. Bought a foreclosed duplex for $45,000 that needed another $25,000 in renovations just to make it habitable. Everyone thought I was crazy for taking on such a project. 6 months later, I was collecting $1,400 monthly rent from both units, generating over $16,000 annually from a $70,000 total investment. That was my light bulb moment about building wealth through real estate. Fast forward to today, I own 23 rental properties across 3 counties, run a contracting business that generates approximately $850,000 in annual revenue, and my personal income last year exceeded $285,000. Not exactly the failure everyone expected from the weird kid who wasn't social enough for college parties. Derek, meanwhile, has been bouncing between various sales jobs for the past decade like a ping pong ball, currently selling insurance policies and driving a 2018 Honda Civic with 150,000 miles and a questionable transmission. Still talks constantly about his big break that's perpetually just around the corner, usually involving some get-rich-quick scheme he learned about from a podcast. But the real story that brings us to today's nuclear revenge starts 3 years ago, when Derek married Brittany. And sweet mother of pearl, this woman is something else entirely. Brittany, 28F, represents what happens when unchecked entitlement collides head-on with complete delusion about reality. Grew up as the spoiled princess of parents who went bankrupt trying to maintain wealthy appearances, and now she expects the exact same lavish lifestyle despite contributing absolutely nothing productive to society or her own household. This woman has never held a legitimate job for longer than 3 months in her entire adult life. Her resume reads like a comedy sketch. Social media consultant for her friend's failed boutique that lasted 6 weeks. Brand ambassador for some pyramid scheme selling overpriced weight loss shakes. Lifestyle influencer with 847 followers, half of whom are bots. And event coordinator for her cousin's wedding that ended in disaster. She spends her days taking 40 photos of the same outfit from different angles, complaining about how expensive everything has become while refusing to work anywhere that might require actual effort or accountability, and planning elaborate vacations that someone else will inevitably have to fund. Derek is completely and utterly under her spell, in the most pathetic way imaginable. She's somehow convinced him that being her full-time financial provider represents traditional masculinity and real love, while she sits at home ordering $30 worth of DoorDash for lunch and researching $500 handbags she needs for her Instagram content. The confident, independent guy I grew up with transformed into a walking doormat who asks permission to buy his own lunch and apologizes for working overtime to pay their bills. It's honestly painful to witness. Before diving deep into the main story, I absolutely must introduce you to my neighbor, because his perspective and advice become crucial elements later. Steve, a 45-year-old union electrician with zero tolerance for BS, had been warning me for years. Alex, your family treats you like a personal bank account with legs. When are you finally going to grow some spine? I should have listened. It started innocently enough. Derek's transmission died, needed $1,800 for emergency repairs, or he'd lose his job. Mom called asking if I could help since family takes care of each other. Sure, whatever. $1,800 won't break me. 2 weeks later, Brittany needed $650 for urgent dental work. Then their AC died during a heat wave, $1,200 for emergency replacement. Then her car needed tires and brakes, another $800. Each request came with elaborate sob stories about how temporary their situation was, how they'd definitely pay me back once Derek's next commission check arrived, and how this would absolutely be the last time. Then they decided to take an anniversary trip to Florida, because Brittany was really stressed lately and deserved something special. Derek called asking for $2,800 to cover flights, hotel, rental car, and spending money. Stressed from what exactly? Sitting at home scrolling social media while he worked 60-hour weeks? But I paid for the vacation anyway, because that's what family does, right? This pattern continued for 3 solid years with increasing frequency and escalating amounts. Every month brought some new financial crisis requiring my immediate intervention. Car payments, credit card bills, emergency vet bills for their designer dog they couldn't afford, rent assistance, utility bills. Here's what really got under my skin. Brittany's attitude became increasingly entitled. She'd text me, "Derek said you'd cover our electric bill this month. Can you Venmo me $240 by tomorrow?" Or, "Need you to transfer $400 for groceries, thanks." Like I was some utility service she could activate whenever convenient. The passive-aggressive comments at family gatherings became relentless. She'd criticize how I was too obsessed with work and emotionally unavailable, all while wearing a $220 dress I bought her, carrying a $180 purse I gave her for Christmas, and sporting $350 shoes charged to a credit card I was helping pay off. Derek never defended me. Not once. He'd just laugh awkwardly and change the subject whenever his wife verbally attacked the guy funding their existence. Never told her to back off, never showed appreciation, just sat there like a neutered pet while she disrespected the person keeping them financially afloat. My parents thought Brittany was wonderful for Derek. They loved how she brought out his sensitive side and made him more family-focused. Translation: she successfully transformed their formerly confident son into a dependent child who came running to mommy and daddy whenever his wife overspent their budget. Through all this chaos, I kept obsessively detailed records of every transaction. By Christmas last year, my spreadsheet showed I'd provided over $54,000 in direct financial support over 3 years. Not loans, outright gifts given during temporary crises that somehow never ended. The breaking point had been building pressure for months, but I didn't recognize the warning signs until everything exploded at once. 2 months ago, Derek celebrated his 32nd birthday. Dad decided this milestone deserved a major celebration and booked a private dining room at Romano's, an upscale steakhouse downtown that charges $45 for ribeye and $18 for cocktails. The kind of place that makes middle-class people feel sophisticated while systematically emptying their wallets. 20 people attended: immediate family, cousins, family friends, plus Derek's work colleagues that Brittany insisted on inviting to expand their social network. Dad was acting like a big shot, telling everyone how proud he was of his successful son. I showed up wearing my best charcoal suit, brought Derek a $280 bottle of Japanese whiskey he'd been wanting, and prepared to celebrate despite our complicated relationship. Brittany was already working the room like she was hosting a charity gala, wearing what I later discovered was a $420 dress bought specifically for this occasion using credit cards. Naturally, she was also sporting the diamond tennis bracelet I'd given her last Christmas, the one that cost me $750. The entire evening she held court like some socialite celebrity, talking animatedly about their upcoming California vacation, funded entirely by yours truly, their ambitious plans to buy a house, using what down payment exactly, and her various business ventures, selling face masks to her 13 Instagram followers. The atmosphere was genuinely pleasant and celebratory. Derek was being his usual charming self. Everyone was laughing at his stories. The whole extended family seemed to be having a wonderful time. Then came dessert service and the inevitable toast portion. Dad kicked things off with his standard proud father speech. A few cousins shared humorous childhood memories. Derek's boss said kind words about his work performance and potential for advancement. Everyone was feeling good, celebrating Derek's milestone birthday. Then Brittany stood up with theatrical flair. She'd been drinking diet soda all evening, since she doesn't consume calories after 6 p.m. But she gets extra bold and attention-seeking when she's the center of focus. She was holding a crystal glass of sparkling apple cider, working the room like she was accepting an Academy Award. "I just want to say how incredibly blessed I am to have found Derek," she began. "A real man who truly understands what actually matters most in life. Standard supportive wife material so far, right?" But then she continued with increasing confidence and volume. "It's so refreshing to be with someone who has genuine emotional intelligence and depth. Someone who understands that real success isn't just about accumulating money or hiding behind work projects to avoid real human connection." I could feel this heading somewhere uncomfortable. "Because honestly," she said, looking directly at me with this condescending smile, "some people think that having money automatically makes them important, or interesting, or worthy of respect. But what actually matters is authentic human connection, real love, genuine family values." The room was getting noticeably tense. People were looking back and forth between her and me, clearly sensing brewing conflict. "I mean, just look at Alex over there," she continued, gesturing toward me dramatically. "All that money, all those rental properties, all those business accomplishments, and what does he really have to show for it? He's still completely alone, still working obsessively every weekend, still too socially awkward and emotionally unavailable to build any meaningful relationships." The entire table went completely silent. Derek was suddenly fascinated by his dessert plate. My parents were staring at the wallpaper like it contained universal secrets. But Brittany was just getting started. "It's actually kind of sad and pathetic when you really think about it," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Like, we all appreciate that Alex helps out financially sometimes, and that's nice, I guess. But you can't purchase your way into being relevant or respected. You can't buy a personality or genuine human connections." She paused for maximum dramatic effect, that smug expression getting wider. "I guess some people are just naturally destined to be supporting characters in other people's stories. Background players who show up with their wallets open, but nobody actually wants to spend real time with." Then she raised her glass with theatrical flourish for the final blow. "So here's to Derek, my amazing husband, who chose authentic love over empty materialism, real relationships over profit margins, and genuine success over whatever sad, lonely existence that represents." She waved dismissively in my direction, like I was something unpleasant she'd stepped in. The silence that followed felt like hours. I sat there processing what had happened, while 20 pairs of eyes watched my reaction. This unemployed, debt-ridden, credit card maxing leech had just systematically destroyed my character in front of my entire extended family. At a dinner I was secretly paying for, while wearing jewelry I'd bought her. Derek finally looked up with obvious discomfort. Britt, maybe that was a little harsh and… No, I said calmly, standing up slowly while maintaining eye contact with her. Please don't interrupt her. I want to hear absolutely everything she has to say about my character and life choices. Brittany's smug expression faltered slightly when she realized I wasn't going to slink away in embarrassment, but she held her ground defiantly. I think I've made my perspective perfectly clear. I nodded thoughtfully, pulled out my phone, and started typing while everyone watched in confused silence. Just handling some quick business matters, I said matter-of-factly. Please don't let me interrupt the celebration. What they didn't know was that I was canceling the payment authorization for that dinner. The restaurant would be running Derek's personal credit card in about 45 minutes for the full $2,100 bill plus automatic gratuity. The same Derek who'd called me 3 days earlier, asking for $180 because his checking account was overdrawn again. But that was merely the opening move in what was about to become total war. I looked around the table slowly, making deliberate eye contact with each family member who'd sat there silently while this woman completely eviscerated my character. You know what, Brittany? You're absolutely right about one important thing. I have been a supporting character in your story for way too long. But here's what you don't seem to understand about supporting characters. When they decide to leave the production, the entire story usually falls apart pretty quickly. I headed calmly toward the exit, but turned back for one final comment. Oh, and Derek? You should probably call your bank in about an hour. You're about to get a real education in what financial independence actually looks like when you don't have a safety net. I walked out to the sound of confused murmuring, and Brittany asking loudly, what did he mean by that comment? They were about to find out exactly what I meant, and it was going to be absolutely brutal. I drove straight to my neighbor's house after that disaster, hands still shaking with rage and adrenaline. Found him in his garage organizing tools, while classic rock played from an old radio. How was the big family birthday celebration? He asked without looking up. Remember what you've been saying for months about growing some spine and shutting down their financial exploitation? Now I had his complete attention. He set down his tools and turned to face me with a knowing grin. Oh man, what happened? You look like you're ready to burn something down. I told him absolutely everything. Every detail of Brittany's calculated character assassination. The family's cowardly silence during my public humiliation. The complete disrespect after years of financial support. By the time I finished, he was leaning against his workbench, shaking his head in disgust. Alex, let me tell you something as someone who's been married 18 years. If my wife ever talked to my brother like that in public, especially my brother who'd been supporting us financially, I'd shut that down immediately and demand an apology. The fact that Derek just sat there like a mute makes him equally guilty. He grabbed 2 ice-cold sodas from his mini fridge, handing me one while gathering his thoughts. You know what your fundamental problem has been? You're too generous for your own good. You've been enabling these people for years without any boundaries or consequences, and now they think your money is their automatic birthright. They have zero respect for you because you've never demanded any. He was absolutely right, and I knew it. So what's my move here? I asked, genuinely seeking his advice. My neighbor smiled, and it definitely wasn't pleasant. You remind them exactly what life was like before you became their personal ATM machine. But you do it systematically and strategically. You don't just cut them off emotionally, you methodically dismantle everything you've been propping up financially. We spent the next 5 hours planning my response with military precision. My neighbor, despite being a straightforward blue-collar guy, has an absolutely devious mind when it comes to delivering justice to people who deserve it. Here's the comprehensive strategy we developed. Phase 1. Immediate financial chaos and emergency situations. Phase 2. Credit destruction and asset seizure through legal means. Phase 3. Systematic investigation and exposure of illegal activities. Phase 4. Social humiliation and reputation destruction. Phase 5. Complete isolation and family alienation. The key to making this work, he explained while sketching timelines, is making everything appear completely natural and unavoidable. Like their terrible financial decisions are finally catching up to them after years of consequences being delayed. You're not attacking them directly. You're just removing the safety net they didn't realize they were completely dependent on. Over the following week, I began implementing Phase 1 with surgical precision. Remember that birthday dinner bill? Derek's credit card got declined spectacularly in front of the entire extended family. They had to call my parents at 11 p.m. to come bail them out with cash, leading to an extremely embarrassing conversation about their actual financial situation. But that public embarrassment was merely the appetizer. What Derek and Brittany didn't realize was that I'd been co-signing or guaranteeing various financial obligations over the past 3 years. Brittany's BMW lease? I was the guarantor because her credit score was abysmal. Their apartment lease? Same situation. Even their cell phone plan was tied to my credit rating. I started making systematic phone calls to every creditor and financial institution. Hello, I'd like to remove myself as guarantor on account number XYZ. Yes, I understand this might create complications for the primary account holder. No, I'm not interested in discussing alternative arrangements. Within 72 hours, Derek was fielding panicked phone calls about his car lease being terminated early due to guarantor withdrawal. Their landlord was demanding additional security deposits and new qualified co-signers. Their phone service was being reviewed for potential termination. The beautiful part was that I wasn't doing anything illegal, unethical, or even morally questionable. I was simply exercising my legal right to remove myself from financial obligations I'd voluntarily assumed during better times. My neighbor absolutely loved getting daily updates on the chaos. Every evening, I'd stop by his garage and report the latest panicked text message from Derek or confused voicemail from my parents. "This is better than any television drama," he'd say, grinning widely while sipping his evening soda. "You should seriously document this whole thing for posterity." 3 weeks after the birthday dinner disaster, Derek finally worked up the courage to call me directly, instead of going through our parents. "Alex, what the heck is happening with all our accounts and credit arrangements? Our landlord is saying we need additional security deposits and new qualified guarantors by next month. The BMW dealership wants to completely modify our lease terms or terminate early. I've got credit card companies calling every day about payment schedules and account reviews." I let him ramble and panic for about 8 minutes, just listening to the mounting desperation in his voice. Finally, I interrupted his anxious monologue. "Derek, I'm genuinely confused about why you're calling me with questions about your personal financial problems and credit obligations. Because you... Wait, what do you mean? You're the one who's been helping us with all this stuff, and now suddenly, I'm the one who's been what exactly? Enabling your wife's shopping addiction and your complete inability to budget responsibly for basic adult expenses? Yeah, that's definitely over permanently. Alex, come on, man. We're family here. Brittany didn't mean anything serious by what she said at dinner. She was just trying to be funny, and maybe got a little carried away with... She meant every single word that came out of her mouth, and we both know it. But that's not even the main issue anymore. Then what is the issue? What's really going on here?" I paused for maximum dramatic effect. "The issue is that I finally realized she was completely right about everything. I was just a pathetic supporting character in your story, providing financial services while getting no respect or appreciation. But supporting characters don't have to stay in productions they don't enjoy watching. What does that even mean in practical terms? It means you're about to discover what your story looks like without me playing a role in it anymore." I hung up and immediately blocked his number. That evening, my phone exploded with increasingly frantic messages. Derek calling from different numbers, Brittany texting from her account, my parents calling every 20 minutes, even extended family members who'd heard rumors about some kind of family financial emergency. "Look at this insanity," I showed my neighbor the endless stream of messages. 3 years of financial support ending, and suddenly I'm the villain destroying the family. "That's exactly how it always works with entitled people," he said, opening another cold soda. "People get comfortable with your generosity extremely quickly, but they never adjust to it ending gracefully." Brittany had even lowered herself to sending me direct text messages. "Alex, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding about everything. Derek told me about your conversation, and I think you completely misinterpreted what I said at dinner. I was just joking around with family the way we always do. Can we please talk this through like adults?" "Too little. Too late, sweetheart. You showed your true colors in front of everyone, but the real entertainment was just beginning. During my research into their complete financial situation, I discovered something absolutely fascinating. Remember how Brittany was constantly buying expensive clothes, getting professional hair and nail treatments, eating at upscale restaurants, and purchasing designer accessories? And remember how she claimed to be an influencer and social media consultant building her personal brand? Well, she'd been writing absolutely all of that off as legitimate business expenses on her tax returns. Thousands and thousands of dollars in deductions for what was obviously personal spending and lifestyle maintenance. The IRS tends to take an extremely dim view of that kind of creative accounting and tax fraud. So I made a carefully planned anonymous phone call to their fraud reporting hotline. Hello, I'd like to report suspected tax fraud and false business expense claims. I provided specific dates, exact amounts, and social media evidence clearly showing personal use of claimed business expenses, all publicly available information that anyone could access. The IRS moves slowly and methodically, but when they finally decide to act, they act with devastating effectiveness. Meanwhile, without my credit rating and financial backing supporting them, Derek and Brittany's actual financial situation was becoming painfully apparent to all their creditors. Late payment notifications started appearing on their credit reports like clockwork. Their credit scores began plummeting rapidly. This triggered automatic increases in interest rates on everything they owed money for. Car insurance premiums increased dramatically. Credit card companies reduced their available limits while simultaneously raising interest rates to penalty levels. The financial death spiral had officially begun with increasing momentum, and they still didn't fully understand that I was systematically orchestrating their destruction. 6 weeks after the birthday dinner confrontation, Derek and Brittany were in complete panic mode about their deteriorating situation. They'd been forced to move out of their apartment when they couldn't meet the new guarantor requirements, were temporarily staying in my parents' spare bedroom, and Derek was working overtime every possible hour trying to cover bills that had suddenly tripled due to interest rate increases. Brittany had stopped posting her lifestyle and fashion photos on social media entirely. Pretty hard to maintain an influencer image about luxury living when you're sleeping in your in-laws' spare bedroom and wearing the same 5 outfits repeatedly. But I was nowhere near finished with my systematic destruction of their lives. Remember those 23 rental properties I mentioned owning? Well, I'd been strategically smart about diversifying my business investments beyond just real estate. One of those investments was a significant partnership stake in a property management company that handled rental applications and tenant screening throughout our entire metropolitan area. Guess who their biggest corporate client was? The real estate investment company that owned Derek and Brittany's former apartment complex, plus about 40 other rental properties in surrounding counties. I made a strategic phone call to my business partner about expanding our services. Hey, remember that enhanced tenant screening system we've been developing for the past year? I think it's finally ready for comprehensive field testing across all our client properties. Within 1 week, Derek and Brittany's names were permanently flagged in the regional rental screening database as high-risk tenants. Their recent eviction, rapidly deteriorating credit scores, and history of requiring guarantors had caught up with them. Suddenly, they couldn't qualify for apartment rentals anywhere within 50 miles. Meanwhile, the IRS investigation was gaining serious momentum. Brittany received her first official letter requesting comprehensive documentation for all her claimed business expense deductions over the past 3 tax years. Then a second letter. Then a formal audit notice requiring her physical presence at their downtown office. My neighbor was absolutely fascinated during our evening updates. Alex, you've evolved into a strategic mastermind of revenge. This is some seriously next-level justice being served here. But my masterstroke was still coming. During my detailed record keeping, I'd discovered something particularly interesting about Derek's financial activities. He'd been using my home address for various business and financial documents over the years. This meant I'd been legally receiving copies of his personal mail for years without really paying attention. One piece of that mail turned out to be especially intriguing when I finally examined it carefully. Derek had apparently applied for a small business loan 8 months earlier, using significantly inflated income figures and claiming to own business assets he definitely didn't possess. The loan was for $32,000, supposedly to start a consulting business providing sales training to small companies. That consulting business never materialized. The money had gone directly toward their California vacation, Brittany's shopping sprees, restaurant meals, and general living expenses. No business equipment, no office setup, nothing legitimately business-related. Bank fraud is a serious federal offense with mandatory prison time. I carefully photocopied every single document and sent a comprehensive package to the bank's fraud investigation department, along with detailed documentation proving that Derek's claimed income and business assets were completely fictitious. I also included social media evidence showing how the loan money was actually spent on personal luxury items. The absolute elegance of my systematic approach was that I hadn't actually harmed them directly through any illegal or unethical actions. I'd simply stopped protecting them from the natural consequences of their own choices and reported actual crimes they'd already committed to appropriate authorities. 2 months after that disastrous birthday dinner, their entire existence had completely collapsed. Brittany was facing serious tax fraud charges with potential prison time. Derek was under active federal investigation for bank fraud. They were both unemployed, essentially homeless, and completely financially devastated. And the most satisfying part? They still hadn't figured out that I was systematically orchestrating their destruction from behind the scenes. Last Tuesday evening, I was at my neighbor's house reviewing blueprints for my latest property renovation project when my security system sent an urgent alert to my phone. I checked the live camera feed from my front porch. Derek, Brittany, and both my parents were standing together on my front steps, looking absolutely desperate. Derek appeared to have aged a full decade in just 2 months. Brittany looked like she'd been crying recently and was wearing clothes I'd never seen before, probably borrowed since she couldn't afford new ones. Oh man, this should be absolutely fascinating, my neighbor said, grinning with anticipation. Mind if I observe this confrontation from your kitchen window? I opened the front door but remained firmly in the doorway, deliberately not inviting any of them inside. Alex, my father began with obvious discomfort, we really need to have a serious conversation about this family situation. About what specifically? I replied calmly. Derek stepped forward with his voice noticeably shaky. About fixing this disaster that's happened to our family. About working together to solve these problems. I looked directly at Brittany with obvious expectation. She couldn't make eye contact and was staring at her borrowed shoes. You have something specific you want to say to me? I asked her directly. She finally looked up with eyes that were red and swollen from recent crying. I'm sorry. About what I said at the birthday dinner. About calling you a supporting character. About saying you were socially awkward and couldn't buy relationships. Derek jumped in desperately, his voice cracking with emotion. Alex, we know you're somehow behind everything that's been happening to us. The credit issues, the rental problems, the government investigations. I raised an eyebrow with feigned surprise. Are you actually accusing me of something illegal here? No. Look, we just want to fix this situation somehow. Whatever we did wrong, however badly we hurt you, we want to make it right. My mother finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex, they've lost absolutely everything. Derek might go to federal prison. They're living in our basement and sleeping on an air mattress. And, I replied with complete indifference. That single word hung in the air like a physical blow to their faces. And we're desperately asking for your help to survive this, my father said quietly, his pride visibly crumbling. Help with what exactly? Be specific about what you're asking. Derek's voice actually cracked with desperation. Everything. Legal fees for the criminal defense attorneys, money to pay the tax debt and penalties, somewhere decent to live while we figure this out. We have absolutely nothing left, Alex. Nothing at all. I studied each of their faces carefully, for a long moment, genuinely savoring their complete desperation and helplessness. Brittany, I said with deliberate calmness, 2 months ago, you publicly called me a socially awkward loner who couldn't buy his way into relevance or respect. You said some people are just naturally destined to be supporting characters in other people's stories. Do you remember saying exactly that? She nodded miserably while tears started flowing again. So here's exactly what's going to happen. Nothing. I'm going to do absolutely nothing to help any of you with these problems. Because Brittany was completely right about something important. Some people are naturally supporting characters. But what she failed to understand is that supporting characters can choose to exit the story entirely whenever they want. Alex, please, Derek begged with his voice breaking completely. We'll do anything you want. You want to know the funniest part of this entire situation? I didn't actually destroy your lives at all. I just stopped holding them together artificially. Everything that happened, the debt, the fraud, the tax evasion, the lies to creditors, you did all of that yourselves over years. I simply stopped cleaning up your messes and protecting you from consequences. Brittany was sobbing uncontrollably now. Please, Alex, I'll do anything you want. I'll get a real job and work multiple jobs if necessary. You'll what exactly? Work? You're 28 years old and you've never held a legitimate job for longer than 3 months in your entire adult life. What are you realistically going to do? Serve coffee at minimum wage. Alex, my father tried one final desperate appeal. They're still family regardless of what's happened. I looked him directly in the eyes without blinking. Real family doesn't treat each other the way they treated me for years. You want to see what genuine family loyalty actually looks like? It's me walking away permanently from people who took my generosity for granted and transformed it into automatic entitlement. I started to close the door firmly, then paused for one final observation. Oh, and Brittany? You were completely wrong about something else too. I'm not alone at all. I have genuine friends who respect me, a successful business I built myself, and a life I actually enjoy living. And the best part? None of it depends on people who only value me for my bank account balance. I closed the door with finality. My neighbor appeared from the kitchen with two fresh sodas, grinning like he'd just watched the greatest movie ever made. Holy cow, Alex! That was absolutely brutal and perfect. How do you feel right now? I thought about it for a moment while listening to the muffled pleading and crying from the other side of my door. Like I just removed 200 pounds of toxic dead weight from my life permanently. They remained on my doorstep for another 45 minutes, knocking periodically and pleading through the door. Eventually, they gave up completely and left in total defeat. I haven't heard from any of them since that night.